Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mitch Taco Bell. I am coming to you live on Taco Tuesday here in Fort Worth, Texas. I can't believe this is the 11th episode, and I want to thank Michael Costanza, my good friend, lives down the street, for making that intro for me. That is just awesome. I love it. I have tonight Rear Admiral Tallent with us tonight. He started out in F4s. He flew F-14s as a Rio and then went on to become a Rear Admiral. Quite a career. We've got some really interesting stuff to talk about tonight because character development, ethics, leadership, those are things that I worked with our Marine Corps Summer Leadership Character Development Academy. And if you have young kids in high school, I highly encourage you to go on Facebook and find that page and send an application in, because I believe once we get the vaccines, we'll be able to, COVID will be done, we'll be able to start bringing these great leadership camps back for young kids, because that's the bottom line. We got to develop our young kids, high school kids, our young officers to be the senior leadership that we want running the military and the companies and just taking care of America, if you know what I mean. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Rear Admiral Tallent onto the show tonight. How you doing, sir?
I'm great, Taco. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, no worries. Do you mind if I call you Ham?
No, I prefer it.
All right. I've got Ham. This is just incredible. Now, stepping back, and you joined the Navy in 1974. And you started out, I think, in F4 Phantoms, right?
In 73, I did. I started out in the F4 and did a couple tours in that airplane, and it was wonderful. I mean, the F4 is a cool airplane, and the thing about it is all the instructors, all of my skipper, the department heads were all Vietnam guys, and they all had, they were the real deal, and great people, great leaders, and I really admired them. So it was a great way to start my career.
Well, did you ever get a chance to fly with Pete Pettigrew?
Pete was around San Diego when I was there. I never personally flew with him, but I certainly knew of him. He was Viper is a well-known man in the F4 world, particularly in the West Coast, and right. But I never had the privilege of flying with him.
So we had him on last week, and he was talking about his MiG kill, and he had a brand new Rio in the back of that F4 when he got that kill. Did you happen to know that guy? Did you ever get a chance to fly with him?
What was his name?
You know what? I'd have to Google it. I have to Google it on a.
So I should remember that. I mean, I know him, whoever he is.
Right. So how was the F4 when you first? I mean, I got a backseat hop in an F4 92. It was a civilian F4, like a D model. Had a stick in the back. Mm-hmm. We went up to 53,000 feet doing Mach 1.3 for some missile test out in Barking Sands. And we gave gas off the Herc, and then we went up. That thing, that was spacious. I loved the back of that F4. Mm-hmm. How was that compared to the F-14?
It was a little smaller than the F-14, and technology-wise, it was no comparison to the F-14. But it was, it was a cool airplane. It was, and it was an airplane that, it was hard fighter. I mean, it wasn't a very good slow speed airplane, so you generally kept the speed up, which means if you're putting G on the airplane, you're putting a lot on it to get it to turn. So right. you'd spend a lot of time in a 6.5, 7 G turn trying to keep sight of somebody, and it was just the way the airplane was fought, as opposed to slowing down to where you're at 1 or 2 Gs or something, just kind of horsing around. The F4 wasn't its optimum spot to be in. Although I knew some guys that were really good there, but it's not where you wanted to be in that airplane.
When did the Navy actually get rid of all their F4s?
The last model was the F4S, and it had a leading edge slat, which gave it a better instantaneous turn at least. And I would say the last cruise is probably somewhere around 83 time frame, somewhere near maybe. I know the F-14 squadron I later went to as a department head was VF-154. They had just completed the last F-4 cruise, and transitioned to the F-14 when I joined the squadron. So
wow.
that was around 1984 sometime.
And we had talked earlier, you had actually gotten out of the Navy for a little bit, correct?
I went out of my first tour, went to Top Gun for 2 years. And, like everybody else, I left, this sucks, this kind of, it's kind of like, well, there goes the crowd. I guess I'll go with them, So I got out and immediately, it was hired, like I left on Friday and I came back on Monday. And we were doing a contract right there at Top Gun, a systems development, thing.
Right.
And so that really was, I didn't realize how depressing that would be as you walk out in a khaki uniform on Friday and then you walk out on Monday with a suit on and everybody calls you ham and you feel like an idiot, and then I knew I screwed up fairly early on, but I knew I was sitting in a meeting. And the only guy in the meeting I really liked was Pappy Ernst, and he was the XO, and he was a hard guy. And I was thinking to myself, if the only guy you like in a meeting with all your coworkers is the XO of the squadron, God, you made a mistake. So, anyway, I begged, and they let me come in, and they said I had to be a CAD officer for 2 years, and that was a great job. So it was all right.
What ship were you on for that?
The Kitty Hawk.
Oh, how was that? Good.
It was great. I mean, the Navy was kind of a hard place to be. It wasn't like it is now. It was just, it was one of those places where, you had to suck it up. I mean, there wasn't anybody walking around asking you how you're doing. It was, the military, I would say in general, not just the Navy, was a lot less gentle. And I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm just saying it was a lot less gentle than it is today. But that Kitty Hawk was a great ship, great cruise. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
So what rank were you when you were on that?
I was a lieutenant, and I made lieutenant commander toward the end of that. But, Taco, the thing about it, as a Marine, particularly in some ways I envied ground officers, Marines, Army, and so forth, because you actually work with your people. You're in naval aviation, you can get the feeling that you're somewhat of an elitist because, you fly in the airplane, just the officers do. Helicopters are different. You'll have enlisted crew members, but in the F4, the F-14 or something like that, or in the C-130, you're flying with officers, and the enlisted folks are maintaining the airplane. Mm-hmm. You officers fly the aircraft into combat. So you can get the feeling that you're not, they're working for you as opposed to working with you. I know it may just sound like semantics, but when you're a CAD officer, I mean, you're shoulder to shoulder with these guys. When that airplane turns on you, you're all grabbing a pad eye together, right. And you all clean the deck together. You all do the thing. And it was just a different feeling of leadership being a catapult officer than I'd experienced before that. It was remarkable, and I enjoyed it.
What leadership lessons did you take away from that particular tour?
I think, leadership is much talked about, and you can read 1 trillion books on it. And a lot of times you can take a course on it, or classes, and a lot of it gets into descriptions and leadership traits and things like this. But I found it hard when I ask, okay, what is the execution statement? If someone, how do I be a leader? You'll hear things like, well, do it, whatever, when people aren't watching, or they'll come up with some kind of a comment that still doesn't tell you anything. You're still like, huh? So to me, leadership, if I were going to pick 2 words to describe what it is and enable you to execute leadership, those 2 words are constructive confrontation. Now, people go, oh, confrontation, you mean yelling and all that? And that's confrontation isn't necessarily a hostile word. But it means that you see something is not right and you act to correct it in a positive way. So you're walking in your spaces and you see a piece of paper. Well, that paper is going to have to be confronted. Now, you could do it yourself. You could pick it up. You could scream at some enlisted guy to get him to do it. You could muster a working party. There's a lot of ways to confront that piece of paper but the constructive way, it probably just leaned over and pick it up, unless you saw someone throw it down, and then you can go into another leadership lesson with litter and all that kind of thing. My point, though, is a lot of times we see things that aren't right, and we're reluctant to confront them. And the classic example is anyone who's a parent. I mean, here your daughter, she's 14. She wants to stay all night with, somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't love her. She isn't quite to the stage of being evil yet. She still likes you. She still lets you fix her breakfast. She hasn't turned into a sulking thing yet.
That's the next year when the alien hovered over my house and the beam came down and it sucked her brains out, and they put them in a jar, flew back to Mars.
Yes.
We're like, where's our daughter? Yeah.
Yes. Well, so when they're still at that age, they say she's 14, and you want to say, sure, you can stay the night with Becky or whatever, but what you do, though, is you constructively confront this, and you say, well, who is Becky? Mm-hmm. Do I know her? Do we know her parents? Who are these people? Because, it seems like every weekend you'll read in the paper that there's some young child is killed in a car wreck, and it's always at 2:00 in the morning. And it's always one of these things where the parents don't know, they're out goofing around. And what I'm saying is, you have to confront those you love. Now, hopefully you can confront them in a positive way, but you have to do it, because you can't just, one of the hardest things is to confront someone who's senior to you. I remember I was a young lieutenant or an ensign, I guess it was, and I was going to get a haircut and I forgot my cover, and instead of going back to the squadron, I did the old, you make a napkin. I said, oh, shoot, I'll just run across the parking lot into the barbershop. Well, a chief stopped me. Here is a chief. I'm an ensign, I think.
Yeah.
And he was very good about it. He just said, sir, you don't have a cover. You need to go back and get your cover. And I did the old, oh, you're right. That kind of thing. But the guy did the right thing. And he confronted me in a constructive way. But you imagine how hard it is to confront a senior, and maybe it's even harder if to confront a peer. Let's just say you have a good buddy and you're out, drinking a bunch of beers, uh-huh. and he's getting super loaded and kind of obnoxious, and then he's like, screw this, I want to drive home. And what are you going to do?
You beat the guy's butt.
Yeah,
take the keys, But
you got to.
He won't remember it on Monday morning. He'll just remember, how did I get this shiner? God.
Well, that's right. Well,
no, I know what you're talking about. Like getting gas. I was sitting there getting gas one night, and I'm at 7-Eleven, and this kid pulls up in a beautiful Mustang, and he's got a young hot girl sitting in the seat. He's a high school kid, and I'm pumping the gas 2 feet from him, and he whips out a cigarette and lights it up. And I looked at him, and I'm just amazed that he's smoking a cigarette. So I go, hey, could I borrow you for a second? And he goes, huh? I said, come here. There's something you need to see on the front of your car. And we walked about 25 feet in front of his car. So now I'm looking at my convertible, his car, and he's smoking a cigarette. And I said, hey, that is a beautiful car. Is that yours? Yeah. Well, it's my dad's. And is that your girlfriend? Oh, yeah, that's my girlfriend. She is gorgeous. And he goes, yeah, man, she's pretty hot, isn't she? And I go, yeah. I go, can I ask you a serious question? He goes, yeah. I said, do you know what the flash point of gasoline is? He goes, huh? I go, do you know what the flash point of gasoline, the point at which gasoline vapors will ignite or explode when coming in contact with flame? And he goes, no. I go, then, you probably ought not to smoke next to a gas pump, because if you're the idiot that blew up your dad's car and burned that beautiful girl, I'm telling you, dude, you would never get a date for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And he just went, okay. And he put the cigarette out, and it wasn't, I'm thinking if I'd gone at him like, hey, you idiot, put that cigarette out. Yeah. But it worked out really well. He went back, and when we got done, we both kind of said goodbyes, and I guarantee you he thought about that, but it was a constructive way to get him to conform to the right thing to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's see that's a great way to handle it. But I created a little program. I think I told you about this for Naval Air Forces, and it had about 35 vignettes, and they were all stories similar to what you're doing. Stories they were actually true, but I had to modify them some to get through the JAG folks wouldn't let me, actually take a true story to its fulfillment. So, and these stories were basically about E1s to O9s. And it had all kinds of stuff from, adultery to, cheating on travel forms and sex rings and all kinds of stuff. All the stuff we do, So,
well, we're kind of talking about leadership in terms of being the CO, commanding officer. Right now, I don't know how many guys in the Marine Corps. I look at something and a general got relieved, or a CO just got relieved for something that. I don't know if we're just in such a politically correct world that we can't accept criticism or somebody saying something. We don't give them a second chance. It's just instant gun to the head and you're fired. Did you see a lot of that in the Navy? I mean, you had a great quote. You said something about in Vietnam, we never lost a single leader, but we lost 40 commanding officers in how long of a span that was causing issues with command leadership and environment and things like that.
Right. Yeah. It's well, some of it is truly boneheaded. I mean, the one thing I tell people was, the sex drive is right on Pavlov's hierarchy, right at the very bottom, right down there with eating and, there's sex. I said, it's pretty primal. And it's in your DNA, and so I'm not going to say all men are a bunch of horn dogs running around, looking at people, but I think we have to realize that taking an oath and wearing a uniform isn't going to protect you from your vulnerabilities, and I think. I think people are a little more vulnerable sometimes than they think they are. I don't think guys necessarily set off to misbehave or I think what happens is I think men are somewhat opportunists when it comes to this, and I think some, they'll set an issue will present itself, and instead of instantly stopping it, they will tolerate. Going beyond a point that they know is correct until eventually they get themselves into trouble. I mean, an example I use is you have a group of people and you say, okay, you're the CO of the squadron or whatever, and you get an email from this old girl that you used to really, get it on with in college, and she wants to be friends. Well, do you friend her? What do you think? And in a group of people, you'll no, I wouldn't, or you'd, but you'll have some, sure, why not? And they, okay, all right. Well, do you tell your wife?
And they'd be like, oh no. Yeah.
Well, of course not.
Then don't do it. Right. Yeah.
I said, well, but if let's say that you get by the wife thing and you say, I'm going to friend her. What exactly do you think is going to happen? I mean, what in your wildest dreams, what do you want to happen? And a lot of, there's kind of this vague, I'm not really sure. And then the true story was this guy does this, and then he agrees to meet her for drinks. And then here you go. And then over the course of a month, it turned into what you could imagine. Of course, she got, I think she got some remorse, told her husband. Of course, it all blew up and the guy got fired. So some of this stuff isn't really politically correct. It's just being stupid. The Navy just isn't going to tolerate that kind of activity. There was a time when you could, drinking on the ship. There's a lot of things that were tolerated. Or the punishment would be a hand slap. But those times are long gone. The Navy just.
Who's the Navy captain off the aircraft carrier that was shit canned over the coronavirus deal? Because he reported up the chain that this was affecting the readiness of the ship.
Yeah. Well, Brett Crozier is his name. Whenever I was in personnel command, I was a head aviation detailer,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a young lieutenant helo dude that was one of my detailers,
Mm.
and he was super. I mean, in fact,
That's what
he
everybody
was one
said.
of the very rare times when we took a helo guy and transitioned him to the F-18. I mean, you
Uh-huh.
never do that. You don't. But because once I mean, the helo community needs good guys too,
Mm-hmm.
and it's somewhat of a dubious morale thing to lift one guy and put him into the Hornet, which is seen by many to be, kind of the thing to do. But we did that for him. I mean, he was beyond average, and sure enough, he achieves success in his career and later gets a nuclear carrier. I think the problem that what Brett did, the thing that I wished he hadn't have done, was the way he delivered his message.
Right.
As a commanding officer, he could have sent a personal for message to anybody he wanted to. Now, he would be smart to inform his chain of command, but he didn't have to. I mean, he could send a personal for message to the CNO if he wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
or he could have sent a standard Navy message. He could have sent a Class CC message. He could have done a lot of things other than as kind of a letter via email thing. So I wish he hadn't have done it that way, because it sets him up then for criticism.
Mm.
If he would have done it via the message traffic, then there would have been any kind of an issue with him, I don't think.
Mm. How about you? When you were on the ship as a CO, you were 142,
142.
142 Ghost Rider. So back when was that cruise that the whole Battle Lee thing I read about on the internet happened?
That was in 1990. In fact, we were in Naples, about ready to come back home, and Saddam invaded Kuwait and kicked off this Desert Storm, Desert Shield thing. So, but yeah, 1990 was when that was. And the story, as you read, was I had a lot of great JOs, but there was a core of about 6 of these lieutenants that kind of ran the world, and they came to me one day and said, the dogs are waiting till we turn in our yellow sheets, and then they'll fat finger their yellow sheets, so they beat us by about an hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it doesn't seem like much, but
it adds up.
But it adds up quickly. And the Battle E, a lot of it is based on deployed flight time. And I think we dropped one sortie the entire cruise. My squadron did, and the dogs, buddy, and the dogs dropped, I don't know, 20 or 30. So there was no way that they would be ahead of me in flight time without doing something. Anyway, I approached their skipper, and he said he didn't know anything about it, so forth and so on. And after a couple of days, I said, well, we're going to do it too, because I wasn't about to lose based on an artificiality. That night I didn't sleep, though. I mean, it's like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, what a stupid idiot you are. So I called the guys in and said, look, we're not going to do this. You know better than that too. I mean, we're going to do it right. And if we don't win, we don't win. But and they won. So anyway,
what's that thing? Cheaters never win. Come on.
Well, they had a great squadron, and I'm not going to say that's the only reason why they won. They had a great squadron. They beat us, so it's kind of like this last election. Somebody wins, somebody loses. At the end of the day, you just say, okay, and that's it. So
right. Well, it's a good story. I mean, it's a good leadership lesson in terms of instilling integrity in the junior troops to see what's right, so that when they go on to become the XO or the CO or the OPSO.
Well, as a matter of fact, then some years later, they're they're at one time, I had five of the six were Air Wing commanders at the same time, and the other guy was in the nuclear pipeline to get a carrier. Of those JOs we had, we had some remarkably talented guys, and John Aquilino now is a 4-star. Kenny Weitzel is a 3-star. Just picked up Air Forces Command. Woody Haran was a 1-star. So I'm not saying Admiral is the pinnacle. I'm just saying that they were successful.
Out of your group, you have quite a few.
Yeah, they were a successful crowd, and you want to think that maybe you had some small part in helping them understand and get where they are. So,
well, you went on from that, and you ended up being the J3 in AFRICOM, correct?
EUCOM, but
EUCOM.
Well, EUCOM at that point also had responsibility for Africa.
Okay.
This was before AFRICOM was created, which was in 2006.
Oh, I screwed up. I said you were in AFRICOM.
That's okay. I mean, we had responsibility for both Europe and Africa, so it's an easy thing to confuse.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that happened there, Taco, that is a little bit relative to what's happened here recently, is I think your listeners will recall the situation in Benghazi where the ambassador and I think it were four contractors, CIA guys, contractors were killed in Benghazi. Mm-hmm. And there's some question about the response and so forth.
Couldn't have gotten the F-16s from Aviano or the fast troops in, or?
Well, the reason that bothered me was because when I was a J3 at EUCOM, we had a similar situation happen in Liberia. Mm-hmm. Liberia is a country on the west coast of Africa that is, it was actually populated by freed and escaped slaves from the United States that felt they would get more justice by going back to Africa as opposed to trying to. It's somewhat of a sad story. It's not a jubilant story of the United States wonderfulness. It's a situation where a lot of African Americans felt that they would be better off going back home. And so anyway, they populated Africa, Liberia, and it was the first independent country in Africa. And Monrovia was the capital. And so the problem, though, is that it doesn't have much industry. The agricultural system wasn't bad; it was somewhat bad. And in the 1980s, they went into the Civil War, and they just never really recovered. Mm-hmm. Then I think Ebola got them. So it's a difficult situation for them. But anyway, so in around 2002 or 3, we noticed there's a lot of violence going on. The country had collapsed. There was a lot of crap going on. They were piling bodies up in front of the embassy. And so I contacted through the State Department, contacted the Ambassador Blaney and asked if we could send a team down to assess the situation and see if we could help him. Mm-hmm. There's a thing called a regional security officer who works for the State Department, the RSO.
RSO, yeah.
And he of course was attended to this too. So, I sent a team down there, and they looked at all kinds of things from the perimeter security. What kind of overlook was there? What kind of weapons did the hostiles have? Mm-hmm. What kind of defenses did we have? The water situation, electricity, sanitation. What does a pier look like? Road to the airport, all this kind of stuff you can imagine. Energy, water, sanitation, medical, food supplies, all that kind of stuff. And we were concerned because there was going to be no defense of the embassy by any local capability. The government had collapsed, and so sure. there was no real defense. And so General Jones and General Wald. General Jones was a EUCOM commander, and he was very leaned forward into this. I mean, very intense. And so
Marine Corps General Jones.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he the guy was. insistent. So it wasn't one of these things where you're like, well, we'll get back with you. I mean, he wanted to know exactly what we could do, what were the options. And so we sent a 50-man fast team
Out of Rhoda, probably.
Out of Rhoda. There are 300
Right.
of those guys there, and they're there just for this, for deployment to embassies, for
Right.
security. I mean, we could have sent more than that. So we sent in 50, and we brought them in helicopters, and the Marines have quite a reputation. Quite a reputation, and no one wants to mess with them, and so they established a security perimeter, and things started to calm down, at least around the embassy.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't feel like it was threatened any longer. There were no mortars coming inbound or anything like that. And then that gave us an opportunity then to work with the United Nations and get a Nigerian battalion to come in and the peacekeeping and so forth and so on. And then I think 2 years later, I think in 2005, they had their first free election and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
So my point is that it's hard for me to understand how the Benghazi thing could happen. The situation on the ground was knowable. I mean, there is no excuse for not knowing what was happening, what's there, who's there, what's their disposition.
They had a bird up overhead.
Yeah. I mean,
Predator
it's
flying.
and we have a lot of assets in those regions that are right there.
Mm-hmm.
So being kind of surprised by this. I mean, you can't. It's true. You cannot. The military cannot order an ambassador to leave. You can't direct him to leave where he doesn't work for you. But I think you can give an ambassador. I can't believe you can't give him enough specificity on what he faces that he would take that option. So the whole thing was just, I didn't understand why we would have allowed him to stay there under the situation that he was under, unless he absolutely just refused to accept it. And I don't know, but I tend to not think that's what happened. So anyway, that was good. Frustrating.
Yeah, that was actually 13 Hours of Benghazi was a great movie. That was an awesome movie and well represented. Movie. Went to the premiere with Tig and all those guys at the Cowboys Stadium, and got to meet them later on. That was incredible guys.
Yeah,
trying to get him on the show.
Happens, but. I mean, those guys. I mean, we have just a phenomenal. It seems like every generation, every generation will produce enough guys and gals that care that'll risk it all for the country. They'll risk it all for their friends. And so we don't. Sometimes I wonder at what point will this all dry up and we just can't get them in anymore. We have to. But so far, I mean, like I say, every generation has got some real rock stars when it comes to putting on a uniform and doing hard things.
Well, having recruiting duty for years and years, you got less than 1% of 1% or something, some outrageous number of the kids that are able and have the ability to even pass the physical part to even get in the military. If we had a draft right now, we would have half of the compound would be fat bodies trying to lose weight to get in shape to be able to get over the bar. You set standards and you got to make the standards. But I think you're right. You're always going to have those hard charging kids that want to be part of something. And whether you're in the Navy team, Marine team, Army team, Air Force or Coast Guard, you sign a blank check to the United States government for up to and including your life. So whether you're peacetime or wartime, doesn't matter. At any time you could get called up. So always proud when I hear like your nephew joined the Marines, didn't he?
Yeah, I was telling Taco earlier, I have a younger brother who was somewhat of a communist, lives in Georgia, and he calls me up. This was about 1990. This is 2002 or something like that. He calls up and he's wanking around about Cody. Cody he has twins, Cody and Jesse. Mm-hmm. And Cody has gotten in trouble, and he they found marijuana in the car, and I don't know what I'm going to do with him, and he needs a change. And I said, well, you mean, what are you calling me for? He says, well, I said,
would you write him a letter of recommendation, get in the Navy?
You want him to get in the military? I was thinking my communist brother wants, I said, and he said, well, I think he needs to change. And I said, well, I mean, does he need a skill? I mean, does he need to just go off someplace and disappear for a while? And Steve says, no, he just needs to change the way he thinks about himself.
Right.
And I said, well, in that case, and Steve later told me when he said, when you said in that case, I knew you were going to say he needs to join the United States Navy. but what I said, well, in that case, he needs to join the United States Marine Corps. And Steve goes, I said, if he needs to change the way he thinks about himself, and he needs a real crisp edge on that, then you need to get him to sign. I said, you got to be careful though, because I mean, it's going to be real hard. I mean, those guys, they don't play around with this. And, I know the commercials look good. The uniforms are great. All that stuff, sabers, killing lava monsters. It's all wonderful. But the reality is it's real hard. And if he fails, he's 18. I mean, he's going to have to carry that. He's going to have to hang his head. People ask him, did you ever in the military? And he'd have to kind of cough in his hand. So, don't let him do it if he doesn't have his heart in it. And I said, the other thing is if he does go and he makes it, I mean, he ain't going to come back just a shorter haired version of what it was going in. He'll be a different guy. And you're going to have to be prepared for that. And so he did. And then we started the Iraq invasion. I thought, Jesus Christ, if anything happens to that kid, I mean,
it's your fault.
Oh yeah. It's like, well, you talked him into,
Well, how's he get along with his commie dad now?
He's kind of apolitical. At least he comes across that way, which is pretty smart, I think, for anybody.
Want to get invited home for Thanksgiving or Christmas?
Yeah. I mean, he's a pretty he's in like any other kid his age. He's pretty. He's more liberal, let's just say, than I am. But he's willing to, he understands paying the price. He understands paying your own way. He understands this kind of stuff too. So he's a pretty good kid. And then he re-enlisted for a second tour, and then of course it was off me. He's on his own now, and so he did too, and he got out as a sergeant. Now he works. He's a dog trainer. The attack dogs, security dogs, for the U.S. government. So,
well, if you're listening to this, Cody, right, Cody?
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, Cody, proud of you. I am super proud of you.
He's a good kid. See, that's my attack poodle that you hear. If you hear it, buddy,
I hear it.
Go find mom. I can't go out and play right now.
You know what? And folks, one of the things I wanted to talk about too, Mayor of Olongapo, the mayor of successive miracles, and Winnie Keegan. So when did you decide you were going to become an author? I mean, was this something that started on float when you had some extra time in your stateroom, or how did you start writing? When?
I always liked writing stories, but I never thought about it. Dog is gonna love you.
Fine.
But I was going to war college, and this was after my command tour. And it was one of those things where I'm living up. I'm doing a geographic bachelor thing where Monica and Steve and my son are in Virginia Beach, and so you drive up to the War College up in D.C. on Sunday and you come back on Friday. So it was one of those kind of things. And during the night, during the week, I would just you sit there and read that stuff and all. And I thought I wanted to do something else. So I just started writing. It just started out with just writing what I thought was funny stuff,
Mm-hmm.
about the Navy, and then it started to kind of shape itself, and then I just started trying to let the characters develop the story for me, and that led to the Mayor of Olongapo, and it's one of these things where I don't know if you've been to the Philippines, but if you've been to Mexico or places like that where you have an evolving society, at
Sure.
least in terms of economics, there's a pretty stark have and have not situation. In the Philippines, it's just absolutely right in front of you. You know, there's a chain link fence. It's that thick, you know, and on your side of the fence is everything. I mean, shoot, everything. And then on the other side is not much.
Is the Crap River.
Yeah. There's the Magsaysay River there, which, so
Guys throwing quarters over the bridge. The kids diving in for him.
Yeah. I mean, so it was one of those things that caught my attention about the responsibility it takes. If you're a guy walking around with a lot of money, and we all were, you know, relative to them, you know, there's a responsibility that comes with that just need to be attended to. You know, just because someone will do something, you don't necessarily need to give them the money to do it. So that led to that book, and then
the Mayor of Successive Miracles. I love the title. How did you come up with that title, Mayor of Successive Miracles?
You know, I was there's a lot of I'm not a hugely religious guy, but there are a lot of passages in the Bible that talk about successive miracles, and that kind of got me thinking about a guy who is so lucky. I mean, everything he does works for him. That he is a recipient of these successive miracles, because he is just a dirtbag, but it always just happens for him. And that's the lead character in this thing, called a guy named Jack Grant, who's probably one of the worst people in the world. You know, if you read the book, he is just an absolute rotten to the core guy. Mm-hmm. And I think it was fun writing about him, because it's fun just, you know, giving life to something that terrible. And I think we all know people like that. We all know people who are successful, and it just grates at you because they're such shitheads. And they just get away with it, just kind of time after time. And so I wanted to write a story about a guy that was that way, and then have it kind of turn out, you know, differently.
Right. So what was his call sign?
Well, see, that's it. He was a guy who didn't have a call sign, and why? Well, it's because the JOs didn't care enough about him to even mess with him. You know, if JOs aren't screwing with you, something's wrong. I mean, because they're like flies. I mean, they will attack anything that's at all approachable. And so if your JO friends aren't screwing with you, it's for a reason. Now later on, then he will get the call sign Phoenix because of a missile he shot. So when you read the book, you'll see why. But yeah, that
sounds like our XO. His name was Tom Brim, and we called him Sunshine, but it wasn't because he blows sunshine up your butt.
Yeah,
we messed with that guy mercifully.
One of the best call signs I ever heard was this is classic JO. There was a guy named Al Krause. He's a super guy, intelligent. I mean, and he was an F-14 Rio, but Al struggled with his weight. He was a big guy, and his name was Al, and so the JOs didn't want to call him Fat Al, so they gave him the call sign of Fatal. And he was gracious enough and had a good enough sense of humor to accept it. Yeah, he said, "Yeah, Fatal. That's because I'm so mean." They go, "Yeah, that's right.
That's it." There was a guy named Combat Kelly. He gave himself that name. He was a Harrier guy, Combat Kelly, but that wasn't what the JOs called him.
I'm sure.
What is What is
we
his
need.
call sign? How do you Weenie?
I tell you what. When I was an ensign in VF 21 in 1970, this is about 76.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if your community was this way, but the F4 community, generally all of the fighter community, was a situation where you're always screwing with each other. I mean, just always.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a friend that worked at the message center at Miramar in San Diego, and I had him help me create a message that ordered this guy named Winfred Clegan into the squadron. And it had all this fake accounting data and all this stuff. He was. Now I talked to my skipper and XO about it. I'm not a total lunatic, and they said, "Let's go for it," And so I created this guy, and the squadron. They make name tags, and they put a patch on his ready room chair, and he had a photo, place for a photo on the officer's photo board. I took a picture of this guy named Pat Yancey. I knew, just out of focus, and put that up, up there in the photo thing, so it had a photo in there. He painted his name on the back of 200. That was the airplane that they put the most junior Rio on the back, and the Air Wing commander's name was on the front. So, and of course he had, and I would have his sister write letters to the CO and XO, and I would have him. I had him postmarked actually in Temecula, California. I mean, because there's no way I could get a postmark from Missouri. That's where he's from.
Right.
And but I could always get rid of the envelope. And so these letters would appear on this in the ready room there in the back of stuck up with a tack. And so this guy, he became real. I mean, flight gear, everything. And the ops officer is a guy named Bullet Bob Canapa. He was like, "God damn it, where's this guy? I'm going to call a bureau," and I pulled him aside. Bullet, he's not real. And then he goes, God. What? And I said, only you and the skipper know. And he goes, so then he would stand up in the ready room. He was the ops officer, and he'd say, "You guys met Clegan yet?" And everybody would go kind of looking around, and he'd go, "Hey, he came by the other day. Great guy. He's a great guy." So he helped me kind of. Well, so this guy, was he was on a manifest to go on the ship. We had a good name tag for him, everything. But anyway, after a while, it just it became impossible to sustain. But and then the squadron kind of like carrying it as our squadron secret. Anyway, after I left the squadron and went on to my next, Weenie Clegan just kind of died out. And so 2017, now it's 2017, and I'm driving from California to Virginia Beach. Monica and I have moved from California to Virginia Beach, and I'm driving, I'm thinking I want to do another book, and I might as well take this fictitious Weenie Clegan character and really flesh out who he is, because the only thing he knew was that he was from Missouri. He was a kid from a small town. He was and his nickname was Weenie. That was really the only. So what story could you develop about that guy? So
that's classic.
That's how he came about. A fake story about a fake guy.
I did that to a buddy of mine. We were over in Okinawa, Japan in 1994, and his name is Tom. And I'll just say Tom because he's on Facebook. He's going to kill me. But Tom and I, every Wednesday night, we went to the O Club and we had Mongolian barbecue. And we're sitting there afterwards in the bar drinking. And he's looking at Stars and Stripes, and he's just pissed. All the gunnies' wives, "Do you know what rank my husband is?" And blah, blah. And they were just sitting there going at each other. And Jeffrey Dahmer had just died. And I remember he was murdered in prison. Yeah. And so the next day, I mean, we kind of got off on the subject of Jeffrey Dahmer and what a weirdo he was and whatnot. The next day, Tom writes an email and sends it over to me at work. And I'm reading this thing and I'm crying. And it's a letter to the editor of the Stars and Stripes. And it says, "Dear sir, what are we going to do now that, Wisconsin has killed one of its own children? They knew he was going to get killed in prison. They sentenced him that anyway, I mean, who's going to publish his culinary cookbook? And what about his endeavors to human physiology? I mean, it was satire, and it was so over the top satire that they published it. Okay. They called him to confirm that, and he signed it Jim Adams. And the funny thing is, this guy, Jim Adams, we got that name because he was a Marine 46 guy on debt. And Jim had his flight suit stolen out of the dryer, and he wrote a letter, Stars and Stripes. So everyone in the entire Pacific saw this idiot write this letter going, to whoever stole my only flight suit out of the dryer, thanks a lot. It's going to take forever to get another one. We're like, you big wimp. We said a bunch of other words, I think, but he signed it Jim Adams. So this letter gets published, and it gets published right before Christmas. And I mean, that week it got published, the very next weekend was Christmas. And Stars and Stripes' entire letter to the editorial page was, every letter was about this weirdo, crazy guy, Jim Adams, Captain USMC. You know, who is this guy and why the hell would he write this and whatever? So Tom is feeling pretty good about himself. And we're sitting in the club one night drinking, and the next day I called him up to go, hey, let's go get some lunch. But I put on my Jimmy Stewart voice, and his Master Sergeant or Tom answered, and I go, hi, this is whatever the editor's name was. I'm looking for Jim Adams. Is he around? And he goes, stand by 1 second. He puts me on hold. And I'm like, God dang it, Tom, man, I just want to talk to you. And his Master Sergeant gets on the phone and goes, hello, this is Jim Adams. And I go, well, hello, Jim, how are you? Well, I'm doing fine, sir. Well, I'm the editor of the Stars and Stripes Pacific, and I just want to tell you, son, that letter you wrote was fantastic. Our readership went like 400%. We're making so much money on advertising just because of your letter. And he's like, oh, well, thanks, sir. What can I do for you? I go, well, write another damn letter, son. That was fantastic. Well, what would you like me to write about? I go, I don't care anything. How about that abortion doctor that got killed or something, whatever, and he goes, oh, okay. Yes, sir. And so I hang up the phone, and then I call right back, and I go, hey, Tom, it's Taco, man. You want to go eat lunch? And he goes, oh, no, I'm busy. I'm writing something. And I go, well, send it to me, because he'd always send me stuff to proofread. I go, send it to me to proofread. Oh, yeah, okay. So that next day, no, I don't see Tom. That night, I'm in the club with him, and we're sitting there drinking beer, and I go, hey, man, so did you finish writing whatever you were writing? And he goes, oh, yeah, man, it's done. I go, well, send it over so I can proof it. And he goes, oh, no, I already sent it off. It went right to the letter to the editor. And I'm like, no. Please tell me you did not send something without me looking at it. Oh, yeah. He called me. No, he didn't. Yeah, he did. I was listening on the other extension. No, Tom. Yes, he called me, the letter editor. And I go, well, did he happen to sound like this, Tom? And he said, write whatever the hell you want. You're a fantastic writer. And I mean, the color drains out of his face. And I go, dude, how bad was the letter? And he goes, oh, it was you thought the first one was over the top? This one was really over the top. So they published his letter. And now it's talking about killing abortion doctors or something like that. And unbeknownst to us, the military doctors overseas could do abortions. We didn't know this. So the doctors were like going to NCIS going, you got to find this guy. This guy's friggin' Fruit Loops, and we're not going to work until you find this guy and put him in the slammer, because he's got some mental problems. And so the editor of Stars and Stripes calls Tom up and goes, hey, and he does sound like this. And he's like, hey, what is your real name? I take it it's not Jim Adams. No, it's not. Well, what is your real name? He goes, go pound sand. I'm not giving you my real name. Well, if you don't give me your real name, NCIS and Air Force, whoever, special services, they're all after you. And I'm going to give them your number. They're going to find you. Yeah, you know what? Go pound sand, click. And we lived in the BOQ with all the other JOs. We're all captains. So he runs down the hallway to the guy that's in charge of the telephone exchange. And they go down there that night and take his phone number and assign it to the gym. and then give them a new phone number and then destroy the record of that number being ever attached to Jim, because this is back in beginning of computers, very beginning of computers. So we were able to do that. And then the NCIS on Monday goes to the telephone exchange and they go look it up and they say, yeah, here's the number. And so the guys get it and they dial the number and it's like MWR base Jim. And they're like, is Jim Adams there? Who? Jim Adams. Oh, you mean the guy that wrote those funny ass articles in Stars and Stripes? Yeah, no, we don't know who that guy is. And click. So they're stonewalled. And apparently it got pretty serious. And his master sergeant was a part-time cop and told him, hey, sir, this has gotten out of hand. These guys really think you're a psycho. I've worked with you for a year. I love you. Let me take you down there and explain the whole thing. Yeah. They don't get your sense of humor. So Tom went with him. They went down there. Then all of a sudden the general wanted to hammer him for conduct unbecoming of an officer. I mean, all this stuff, it went, it was pretty bad. I always felt bad about that, but he still retired as a lieutenant colonel. So he did okay, you know?
Yeah.
he did all right. But I've got those letters published somewhere and they are hilarious, but making up a fake guy, that's classic. That's almost as good as putting my XO's house up for sale when he was on leave.
Well, I tell you what, the mind of a junior officer, it's, quite something.
Yeah. Or, oh man, I could sit there and go on. We used to go buy old hair dryers and put them on top of his wall locker. He was bald. Put empty shampoo bottles up there. Oh my God. No, you know what? My dog went through the windshield once. I hit a tree. And I had to get a new windshield. I go to get a new windshield. I got to get a new sticker, base sticker. And the kid working behind PMO, I pulled butts with him for a week. So we became kind of little friends there. And he pulls a box out and goes, oh, sir, you're going to need this blue sticker. You need this sticker. You need this cherry point sticker. You need this. And I look down. It has the 2-star red,
yes.
2-star general stickers. And I go, can I get one of those 2-star general stickers? Oh, no, sir. Not a chance in hell. And I go, no, I really, man, I want one of those stickers, dude. And he goes, sir, I'm telling you, I can't let you have that sticker. But if I were to be my back turned and he was doing something, I grab the sticker, put it in my pocket. I go to the squadron and my XO had this piece of crap, orange or yellow Volvo 240. I went up there and put that 2-star general sticker up on his windshield. And he drove around for about a week and a half, wondering why all the Marines are snapping salutes as he's driving by. Like, they never done that before. And
I'm liking this Marine Corps.
Yeah, this Marines are sharp here. Hey, these air wingers are looking good. And he pulls into his driveway and he gets out, but he doesn't walk in front of his car. So about a week and a half later goes by, and one of the other majors goes, hey, Brim, when'd you pick up 2 stars? And he's like, what? When'd you pick up 2 stars? And he looks over and the sticker, and he's scraping it off with his penknife. Now he's running through the squadron, grabbing all of us JOs. And he was like Mr. Roberts. What was that guy's name? The skipper. I know you did it. I know it was you. You admit it. You did it.
You know, it was Captain Klieg or whatever it was. Yeah. It was what's his name? James Cagney played the part. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he went nuts. And he's running up and down the hallway, and he's grabbing every JO by the flight suit. And I can hear him coming. He comes into safety office, and I'm sitting there typing something on the typewriter, and he goes, I go, stand up, and I'm like, sir, can I help you? And he goes, Bell, I know it was you, Taco. I know it was you. I'm like, oh, shit, you found out about Iceland already? We'll get back to that. We'll get back to that. and he leaves. Because when I was in Iceland, we all had his name tag made up. So when we went on the road, we put, sure. Tom Brim, Sunshine, first lieutenant. I never made up my rank, but first lieutenant, but I had his name and call sign. Yeah, we all did. I mean, we.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was we did that same thing too. Is it like you go on debt, you take the XO's calls, name and call sign.
Or I had Jay Walker. That was my favorite. Jay Walker. Hey, would you blow me? Oops, that was probably Woody. Yeah. That was. Yeah. I had James T. Kirk. James T. Kirk was a good one. I had James T. Kirk. I had a whole slew of them. I got them around here somewhere in like an ammo can. I'm gonna have to find those things. But yeah. Anyway, you know what? I've got a couple minutes for questions. Let me see if I can put this banner up that shows questions. And I did actually have a couple questions here that I wanted to run through by you here. Oh, Big Bird Puking Dog. You know who that is? Said hello.
Oh, Brankin.
Oh, Big Bird, Brankin. Joe Harrison, please ask him if he knew Admiral Swoosh Sneed. I got to know him while on I&I duty in West Palm. He was a great man.
I do know him. He was the admiral at Miramar whenever I was going through when I first got there as an ensign, and then later on he was Pratt and Whitney rep.
Wow.
When we had Pratt and Whitney airplanes or engines in the F-14. But yeah, he's a great guy, and his son lives here in Virginia Beach. Know him too.
Okay. I've got Medal of Honor recipient Chuck Hagemeister. Really love your live site. Oh, that's cool. Mike Lewis, hey, how you doing? Oh my God, Taco schooled the kid. Yeah, we did. Who was the skipper of the dogs?
Gary Jack.
Gary Jack. And then I got Jeffrey Stewart was on the America 76 to 78. So he's probably my uncle's time frame. And whatever happened to Taylor and Craig? Whatever happened to Taylor and Craig? Yeah, Big Bird asked.
Oh, Taylor Boyd lives in Dallas, and he and I communicate often. In fact, his girlfriend is the editor. Dell Putnam is her name for these books. And don't know what happened to Sample. He disappeared probably somewhere in Alaska.
All right. And let's see, what years were you a ghostwriter?
I was a ghostwriter, got in as the XO in 88, and then I left around 92 or 3, something like that.
Okay. Well, actually, that's about it. That's all we've got for questions. You have anything, words of wisdom you want to impart on my illustrious crew out there in the interweb world?
No, I think if you could just find some way to stay happy, you'll be all right.
I tell you what, everybody, go out. If you get on Amazon, you can buy these books. I got them as a 3-pack for I think $45 or something. They arrived in 2 days, but not enough time to sit and read them in time for our interview.
Well, I think you'll enjoy them. Please let me know how it is, and of course, you and I'll be in touch anyway. So
I will. I'm going to use your style. I've just finished Chicken Hawk, and I have Robert Mason on next week, who wrote that about helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
But did you ever read a book called Pettibone's Law?
Pettibone's Law.
Get on Amazon. If you have a chance, buy this book if you can find it, called Pettibone's Law. He only wrote one book, and then he died of consumption. But he was a Marine that had gone over to Vietnam. But the book, he starts out in F-8s, and then they're over in Da Nang flying F-4s. But a lot of the antics, squadron antics, you would appreciate for sure.
I mean, there's a Grandpa Pettibone, but naval aviation. But
yes. So it's a takeoff on Pettibone's Law. LAW.
Okay.
I'll send you a picture of the cover. It's got an F4 on it. But hey, all sir, right. I can't thank you enough for coming and hanging out with us tonight. It's really been enjoyable. And when I make it back out to Little Creek, I'm going to take my son out there and go drive around. Love to get together and buy you a beer.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I will drop you off here, sir.
My pleasure.
And you have a great night, sir. And thanks again for joining us on Taco Tuesday. You have a good one, boss.
Absolutely.
Hoorah, sir. Bye-bye. Hey, folks. Thanks again for hanging out with us on Tuesday. I hope you got your tacos today. I did. We've got a little place right up the street, and they have margaritas for $1 and street tacos, which are phenomenal. But anyway, fantastic. Next week, I've got Robert Mason. I hope you guys can join us. Robert Mason wrote the book Chicken Hawk, which is probably one of the most descriptive helicopter serious books about his time in Vietnam in the early 60s. So if you get a chance, check out Chicken Hawk as well. I am next going to start devouring these books, and I want to thank Julie Chung out there, who has basically inspired me to start writing my short stories again. And when I put all those together as a collection, I'm going to either write a novel like the Admiral did, or I'm going to do a collection of short stories, because there are a bunch of stories out there. And as he said, it's just kind of usually sitting around drinking a beer with somebody that, oh my God, epiphany, you remember what you did when nobody else remembers any of the stories. But it's always fun. Ladies and gentlemen, you have a great night. I hope to see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. for Tall Tales with Taco. Until that time, hopefully give me a shout, ask questions. If you have questions for Robert Mason, please email them to me, and I will finish up with this. Have a great night. Semper Fi.